Hey everyone, Cadian Sergeant Steele here, and today I just want to do a short video to summarize my wonderful experience I had at the Fabricator's Forge in Coriopolis, Pennsylvania at the end of their Crusade series, in which they held a massive apocalypse game in which each player got to bring 5,000 points to participate. Ended up being a 3 versus 3 matchup. My opponents were Peter, Ed, and Alan. My allies were Wade and Dave. And of course, I took my Cadian army. How can I pass up a chance to bring 5,000 points of Cadian armor and some infantry to the game? So let's go over my list. I'm going to also go over my opponent's lists briefly, and then we'll dive into what the mission looked like. So for my list, as you can see here in the picture, I brought mostly vehicles, although I did bring some infantry as well, to include a 30-man unit of conscripts, 2 special weapon squads, one with Melta, one with Plasma, and several infantry squads, a platoon leader, and a company commander to support my infantry. Here in the list, let's just start out with 3 chimeras, which were equipped with all heavy bolters to carry around the infantry squads along with a platoon leader. Then we had 2 Macarius Vulcans. So its main weapon at this point in time in 9th edition is 16 shots at strength 6 minus 2 damage. So it's really great at killing elites, which there were not a whole lot of in my opponent's armies aside from the crisis battle suits of the Tau. Then we have 5 Leman Russes, 2 of which were tank commanders, one with the Gatekeeper battle cannon, and then we also had 2 units of artillery. One was Triple Colossus Bombards. This is a really wonderful Forge World unit that can ignore all the benefits and penalties of cover, to include -1 to be hit or +1 to saves. It's 3d3 shots at strength 6 minus 2 d3 damage. So it's really great at killing standard infantry or elite units, especially those holding objectives, which is why I brought it to an apocalypse game. At 240-inch range and ignoring line of sight and ignoring all terrain rules, it was going to come in handy. Also brought 3 basilisks, one of which has full payload, to make sure I can get those maximum wounds out against my opponents. Then I brought 3 different Baneblade variants. I brought a Baneblade itself, I brought a Stormlord, which the conscripts were riding around in, and then I also had the Shadow Sword, which I don't think I've actually used since playing in the Apocalypse event at Adepticon roughly 3 years ago. It's been a little while. So it was great to get that one back out on the table, dust it off again, and hopefully shooting some other Lords of War off the table. Now, my allies in this event were Wade and Dave. Wade brought his Talarn army. It primarily was composed of tanks similar to mine, except he had 2 Shadow Swords, a Stormlord, and I believe also a Baneblade. He had several Leman Russes, he had Rough Riders, plenty of infantry and heavy weapon squads riding around in the Stormlord, and lots of artillery. I think he had 4 or 5 basilisks and so forth. Very deadly force, and I gotta say, of the 2 sides, I think Wade really carried us. Those dual Shadow Swords made a huge difference in the game, especially up against the Phantom Titan on the other side. Then, for Dave's army, he had Alpha Legion, although he was proxying them as Ultramarines. So therefore his Alfarius counted as Rebuta Gilliman, and he was using the Ultramarines doctrine during the game. Gave us a good laugh, because then we were running around looking at these heretical symbols all over his army, questioning what the 2 guard forces were doing aligned with him. Our opponents brought Tau, Orcs, and Eldar, and we had 3 different opponents that brought those. One brought a mix of Orc and Eldar, one solely brought Tau, and one solely brought Orcs, and with a lot of amazing retro units in there, and you'll see those in the videos here in just a moment. So the other special thing about this, the tables were laid out in an I shape. In the center was this square. So the square was very important. Everything on the layout was ruins, except for this square in the middle. it counted as an indefinitely tall tower that we could not see over top of. So in order to shoot units on the other side, you had to be able to see left or right of it to get to those units. But it was breachable by infantry or similar unit types, but not vehicles, which most of us had brought. This made a big difference because it placed several of us in a unique point where we had to make sure we were funneling infantry in. There was also a limitation on how many units we could have inside the building based on the objective markers we were controlling on the table. So therefore the objective markers on the table dictated how many units you could place inside the building during your movement phase in order to keep reinforcing the center objective there. The winner was determined by who held the center of the table, the middle of that astropath relay tower at the end of the game. So very important here as you watch the video and I give you updates on what's happening. I did start out with the conscripts there on the center objective supporting the ultramarines, holding it as well. And luckily with Rabuti Gilliman there in the middle and the strength of the Primaris Marines, we were able to hold quite well early game and fend back the orcs and the Tau and the Eldar. All right, without further ado, I'll let you all see the video I recorded for the event. All right, so we are starting deployment in the Apocalypse game at the Fabricator's Forge, and I have some artillery deployed in the back here with some Alpha Marine aerial support as well and troop support. Then we have a line of tanks and chimeras along the front, Macarius Vulcans, and the conscripts are already bravely in the middle of the table. Over on the right flank are more Alpha Legion. We have dreadnoughts, we have bikes, and then it mixes into Wade's Astra Militarum, and we have a whole series of tanks and artillery on the right flank, including 2 Shadow Swords and a Baneblade and a Stormlord. Today, we are, for the Cadians, we're running 1 Stormlord, 1 Shadow Sword, and 1 Baneblade, plus the 2 Macarius Vulcans. But our opponents have lots of Stompas, an Eldar Warlord Titan, Phantom Titan, scary thing. It's going to be devastating. So, we'll see how this goes. Alright, start of Battle Round 2. There were some major devastating losses on all sides. The Cadians got charged by Defcoptas coming in from the back lines, but then they were chewed up by the Alpha Legion flyer. The Stormlord and everything here, Chimera, was, and the Orcs and the Eldar were all obliterated, and just an awful melee, with the Stormlord finishing it off with crushing them with its adamantium tracks. And the Alpha Legion and Cadians have secured the center of the table. The Lehman Russes are surprisingly still alive, although one's down on 2 wounds. And so is most of the Tal'Aran over there, except for a Shadow Sword that was destroyed. Back here, though, we still have lots of Tau units, lots of drones and crisis suits, and lots of Stompas and battle wagons. And of course, this bad boy, I think, is mostly unscathed. So with that, the Cadians and the Alpha Legion are still holding the center of the table. So we'll see what happens here as turn 2 progresses.
That's why I was like, are you sure you want to do that? Because this makes me like to come down and edit it.
End of Battle Round 2, start of Round 3. Here's what we're at. The Orcs have brought in another air wing of Defcoptas, but the Carcharodons have showed up and started helping out the Cadians, Tal'Arans, and the Ultramarines who look strangely like Alpha Legion. And
not Alpha Legion.
Yeah. Then with that, the Ultramarines have held the center of the table, despite the Orcs and Tau having a strong presence in the board as well. But we can see for the Cadians, most of their heavier tanks are now gone, but the Tal'Aran are still holding strong on their end. But the Orcs And the Tau are still very strong and are moving forward. Oh yeah, no Phantom Titan. That is also gone. The Talon shot it off the table in a miraculous round of shooting. So we'll see where this leads during turn 3. Alright, so I didn't record turn 4 for the game. We were all pretty tired. It was near the end of the day. We'd been playing for well over 6 hours at this point. But just to summarize, here's what happened. A lot of the bigger stuff had been either pretty badly damaged or taken off the table, and most everyone's key units were gone at this point. And what happened, though, to settle the game, it wasn't going to matter if a Stompa or a Shadow Sword was able to shoot each other off the table. What mattered was who was controlling the tower in the center there, the Astropath relay in the middle of the table. And the Tau, at the very last moment, snuck in their Warlord unit, and then the way the rules were written for this mission, there was a hierarchy of OBSEC, which included your Warlord for your Crusade army. So because they were able to get that Warlord in there at the last moment and get him on the center objective, they held it and therefore won the game at the very end. Overall, it was a really fun experience. The mission was unique and interesting and kept us all engaged on how to problem solve, playing with some of the limitations that we had. All of my opponents were fantastic. I didn't mention them earlier in the video, but it was Peter, Alan, and Ed, and they just were an absolute blast to play against. And so were my allies, Dave and Wade. We had a really great time too. So glad I went to the event. I wish I'd shot more video. Sorry guys, I was a little tired. There's plenty of pictures. I'm going to share those later. I'm going to make sure the Fabricator Forge has those first. I've already shared a few on Instagram though, just as teasers. So look forward to those as they come out. But I'll be trying to do more narrative events like this that I'm not personally running. It's been kind of the issue is usually if I'm at a narrative event, it's because I'm running it. So I don't get to play or pay attention or record or do other cool things like that. But I plan to try to do this as much as I can in the future. So just let me know if there's something in the southwestern Pennsylvania, kind of southeast Ohio or northern West Virginia or western Maryland area, generally where I'm at. Or I'll even make a drive, depending on the situation, a little farther than that. But that's where I'm looking at. So hope you guys enjoyed the video and the just kind of quick summary of what was going on and some of the cool video of the event. So, all right, I'll see you all next time.